All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to episode 344 of the KissFAQ Podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill. Today we've got the usual crew back together for part 2 of our album MVP battle. So, Marcus Almighty Mark.
Greetings.
69th Blizzard Ken.
Hello.
Lonnie, St. Louis Kiss, who randomly buys stuff with Kiss's name on it and gets in arguments on the message board.
How dare he?
You check with your wife first.
Yeah, that would have been more appropriate.
The door is open. That's actually the first news item of the day is actually Kiss off the soundboard popped up on Target. I wish I'd discovered this myself. There's been some discussions about what is it. The price point on the vinyl is like $52, suggesting that it's a triple, and the CD's like $18, which at Target suggests that it's a double CD. An unofficial, unconfirmed little birdie did tweet that it was a 2001 soundboard from Tokyo, which has circulated in the bootleg world as a lossy. It's decent quality. I had a copy for years, but compared to a full-blown, pristine recording, if that is the case, I'm going to be very happy with that, because number one, it's the archives opening and something coming out. It's also, number two, a obscure lineup, because Ace Frehley and Eric Singer weren't in the band too long together, just long enough to finish up the Australian and Japanese legs of the farewell tour. And number three, well, I haven't bought any Kiss stuff recently, so hopefully it is that, and if not, it'll be interesting to see what it is. Lonnie, obviously you did mention that you'd gotten some heat for just ordering it sight unseen. What's your thoughts and hopes?
Well, I was I guess I was just screwing around the evening on Facebook, and I saw, like, I think it was Everything Kiss or something like that posted that hey, this is up for pre-order at Target. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I clicked on it, and ooh, vinyl, $52. I'm like, oh. I was like, and my wife looked at me and she goes, well, just order it. I know you're going to order it anyway, so just get the vinyl. And I was like, well, she goes, you want the CD too? Buy the CD. I go, oh, I'm not worried about the CD per se. I mean, I'll be able to get a CD of it. I said, but I'll go ahead and pre-order the vinyl just in case. So then I click over to the glorious KissFAQ message board and see what the word is over there. People are speculating, like, Tokyo 2001 is what a lot of people are saying. And there's other speculation. Well, maybe it's Anaheim 76. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I don't really care what it is. Like Julian said, the biggest point about it is this could be Kiss finally opening up their vaults and giving us the things that we've been saying on this show for years of, why don't you do this? Do this. Give us this. Give us that. You're known for your live performances. Why are you holding on to them? I mean, I feel like we say that almost every week. We come back to the same thing. So I'm excited almost no matter what it is. I'm excited to see what it is. And if it's a show that maybe I'm not as thrilled about, so be it, because I don't think this is going to, it doesn't, we don't know anything about it, but pure speculation is it may not be just a one-time thing. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, hopefully it's not. Ken, what are your thoughts and what are your hopes?
Yeah, I hope it is what you say. That is the 2001 Tokyo. It sounds, that's a kind of a pretty good show. I've checked it out, before, obviously, and it's a really top-notch live performance. One of the few good ones from the the later years after the reunion. So if it's that, I look forward to it. If it's some other good soundboard that we've been looking for, that'd be nice too. I didn't pre-order it yet, but I might pre-order it like Lonnie did, because he had a good reason. Is what, I can cancel the order, right?
What?
If you find out it's not the really, if it's a bootleg or something, then you can just turn around and cancel it from Target. So I think I will actually pre-order it.
So the Voice of Reason will smite out of spite and pre-order the Target just to give a Voice of Reason finger to the critics of Lonnie on the FAQ.
I'm joining Lonnie's team.
Thank you.
Mark, how about you?
Well, I don't know. I think I might pass on it. Maybe.
You don't know what it is.
Well, I might get it, but I'm a very
Story.
leery of these supposed soundboard, sort of recordings, because the last couple times I took a chance on them from certain people that were selling, various different kinds of recordings. I've got one that was pretty good, and I got a couple that were all like, sound like they were playing underwater and then pressed on vinyl. It's like, yeah, okay, that was worth $35. So I'm a little leery on buying anything that's not like a real official live recording, because the only bands I've heard that have done really good soundboard stuff is like Rush or like Yes and stuff like that. Like I have one really good Kiss one that I forget what it's called though. Hydraulic, I think it's called, or something like that. It's a 77 tour one. That's really good. Red vinyl. They have all kinds of stuff. You get picks and all that with it. That was a really good one. But then I got these other ones from Knoxville and this and that. They were just crap. They were really early, like Hotter Than Hell tour cycle or something. So it was all shit, right? So I don't know. I'm gonna wait. Worst comes to worst, I'll just get the CD.
Yeah, fair enough. So that is not the big announcement coming for releases for anyone who was worried. But Kiss isn't quite ready. Another new release is actually coming out tomorrow, and it's the second single from Paul Stanley's Soul Station. And it is, I believe, The Spinners. Could it be Falling in Love? So, check it out or don't check it out. It's as easy as that. All right, let's get into today's rankings. Last episode, we went up through Alive 2. And I wasn't going to include Double Platinum in this, but then Ken said I had to. So, of course, Ken's the real boss around here. He looks so calm and everything over there. But when he snaps his fingers, we obey.
Right. I only said it because Killers was in the list. I thought, wait a minute, it's like a best of. I said, well, you got to put Double Platinum, because it had actually a new recording on that too. So think about it.
You are absolutely correct, as always. Let's get on with this. Surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, this group of albums, we're going to go up through Animalize. We've got 3 albums on which we have universal concurrence. And Double Platinum is the first of them. Each one of us chose Sean Delaney as our MVP, which I don't think is going to surprise too many people. Lonnie, start us off with Sean.
No, not surprising that all 4 of us chose Sean, and was thinking about my listing, and it was the slam dunk choice because of the remixes that appear on the album. I think you think about MVP, well, he's most responsible for what ends up on this album, and it's the mixes of Black Diamond and the intro to Rock Bottom Was She and the Firehouse redo and obviously Strutter 78. They all have a different type of feel to them, a little more poppy feel to them, which is kind of Sean's representation, Sean's stamp on these songs. So, as far as the greatest hits album go with some remixes, I mean, I don't see how you don't give it to Sean, because it was his vision and mission accomplished.
Nice, Mark, putting on your producer's hat.
Well, what I wrote down is that I did nice lengthy notes again. So what I put for this was that Sean single-handedly got this album together. The band's only real contribution as a band to this is Strutter 78, their performance of it. Him and Mike Stone went through the entire Kiss catalog to find songs worthy of inclusion on here. Some songs were remixed. Some songs were strictly just edited and kept in original form, but like we said, there was something tagged at the end, or something was done differently at the beginning. So there's a lot of editing, cutting, and splicing, and with 2-inch tape and stuff like that. You don't want to be doing too much of that stuff unless you really know what the hell you're doing. Hence having Mike Stone there. And like I put here at the end, I mean, this compilation is very well regarded within the Kiss fan circles and with me as well. I mean, I'll stand by this and say that this is easily my favorite Kiss compilation of all time. So everything that was done to it, I think, was done with Kiss in mind, trying to propel them to that next step. I think Sean's always had their best interest in mind when he does stuff for them. So, and this was a great job. I think the mixes were interesting that they did. Some of the re-editing was very interesting. And I think Mike Stone could have like a runner-up MVP for that as well. But Sean was definitely the brains behind it.
Nice. Ken, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. And Sean did a great job making a lot of it sound the same, like, you know, as much as you could from the same recordings. Made it pretty even. I do like a lot of the different, you know, changes, like in calling Dr. Love, that kind of weird phasing in of the guitar or whatever, and then the other part where, you know, the calling Dr. Love voice, you know, kind of, you know,
calling Dr. Howard.
Yeah. So it's cool. I like some of the changes. There's a couple things like, okay. I think that the weird thing for me on it though was the black diamond at the end, where it kind of starts over again, you know, at the beginning. Mm-hmm. It was interesting, but I guess it is better than that long droning out at the end of the original one. So
yeah.
But yeah, they actually did some cool things to make it, you know, fresh and different from the original recordings. It was a good job. I like it.
And I think for me, you know, like many people who became a fan after the originals era, this was the first album that we got. Again, for me, it was because it had the most bang per buck, you know, in terms of the number of songs. So I think Sean did a great job of taking stuff produced by Kernan Wise, Bogart, Eddie Kramer, and Bob Ezrin, and making it all sound unified enough to be on the same album so that it felt like an album. And to this day, those songs and those versions are imprinted more on my musical DNA than even the album versions, which I got later. So he did a great job. You know, there's a couple weird choices in there for certain, like the intro to Rock Bottom. But it's still a great job done to present Kiss on a greatest hits album. All right, let's move on.
Sorry, and there's one other thing too. Don't forget, he didn't have a whole hell of a lot of time to do this. I remember reading in a few books saying that he had very little time, that he almost pulled his hair out trying to get this together in the time allotted. And there's also the record that brought up that rumor about Queen for a Day already have being recorded. I remember reading that Black Diamond book that he said during this time, apparently he had a reel with that song on it. So whether that's true or not, who knows? But, you know.
Maybe we'll find out one day.
Mm-hmm.
Or not. All right, moving on to Dynasty. Dynasty. Now we break off into factions. We've got two who went with Ace and two who went with Vinnie Poncia. So, Mark, let's start with you on Vinnie.
Well, I put Vinnie, and the reason why I put it, as I said, at this point, you know, they got a new guy in, you know, and when you get a new producer in, you want somebody who has like strong skills. And Vinnie Poncia is a good songwriter. He's a decent producer. I mean, he's done some records before that obviously impressed them, including Peter Criss's record. I mean, if you can produce a Peter Criss record at that time period, that's saying a lot, right? So it helped a lot as far as, you know, getting them all on the same page. I think, and you know, I also put that this album is in Kiss circles is kind of controversial. Some people always look at this as a disco record. Other people don't think of it that way. I don't. I always think of it as a rock record with two disco songs on it, right? And I think it sounds good. I've always liked this record. It's really, really grown on me over the years, and I think Vinnie did a great job. I mean, every time I listen to this record, I can't help but imagine New York City, downtown, the buildings. It just has that vibe about it, and that, I think, boils down to Vinnie Poncia and the way he recorded this album. It gave it such a New York sound to me. I don't know what it is, but I've always loved it because of that.
Nice. Ken, what about your thoughts on Dynasty? Because you also went with Vinnie.
Yeah. Like Mark, I went with Vinnie, and for a lot of the same reasons. And some others, like his songwriting, obviously, he helped a lot there. And then his production to make it more, you know, hits. Try to make more poppy. To try to get more hits. I don't think another producer could have taken "I Was Made for Loving You" and done that kind of that good of a job on it. I don't think Eddie Kramer would have pulled that off. It would have been a lot different, I think. So yeah, Vinny did what he was supposed to, which is, I think, help them try to get a lot of hits off of this record. So they got maybe a couple or whatever, but they did the job. He did the job, and got them all the work well on all their songs. So
all right,
good pick there.
Moving on to the blue side, Lonnie, we agree.
We do. We both went with Ace Frehley. I debated between Ace and Paul, actually, but I went with Ace because, there's 9 songs on the record. Ace contributes 3 of them. Paul contributes 3 of them. Gene only 2. Moving forward, looking back, Ace had only sang on one Kiss song proper, or I guess 2 Kiss songs proper. I'm going to include Rocket Ride prior to this, but he comes out with 3 songs for this album, and they're 3 great songs. 3 songs that really stand alone between 2000 Man, Hard Times, and Save Your Love. And I think Save Your Love is very underrated. And does not get a lot of the love and appreciation it deserves. So I went with Ace. I think Ace really had, at this point, had really started to come into his own and shine. He did Shock Me. He had done Rocket Ride, and then really shined on his solo album and brought that momentum into Dynasty, and it shows. So I have to give the nod to Ace. He knocked it out of the park for this album.
Yeah, and I concur. Ace came off his 1978 solo album with a whole bunch of panache. He had his guitars, he had his songwriting, for the most part, because he did bring 5 songs to the session, and 3 got used, and 1 was a cover, whereas Peter brought 4 to the sessions and 1 got used. So it was really an era when Ace was confident and very much competent as well. His guitar work is exceptional. His lead vocals are fantastic, and the humor's there. So I just give him the nod, the Bronx nod, just over Paul on this album because of what he brought. And I think, Vinny made him sound great as well. All right, let's move on into another factionalized album, Unmasked. And again, there are 2 of us who are, 2 pairs of us. So, Ken, start us off with your thoughts on Unmasked.
Okay, yeah, well, Unmasked, obviously it was produced by Vinny again, but I didn't go with him. I decided to go with Anton Fig, who stepped in and then did a great job drumming on this one. Obviously, he did the majority. He did the majority of Dynasty, except for the Dirty Living. Yep, and did a great job there. But I think his drumming on Dynasty was a little bit more held back, and maybe they did that on purpose because they're trying to keep Peter, and but he ended up leaving anyway or getting kicked out. One or the 2. So on Unmasked, he did a great job. You could see it was obviously not Peter's drumming on that album for sure, and it's just a great job. They did a great job producing it, and I had to go with him. I could have, I thought about, I could go with Paul because he had some great songs on there and so on, but I think Anton Fig's coming in and doing such a great job. I think he was almost a band member, right, at this point. So, but unfortunately, I think he was not. But I think his drumming really stands out, and that's why I picked him.
Nice. Mark, you agree with Ken?
I sure do. Anton Fig was my MVP, and what I put down is quite simply that Peter had left. The people didn't know that he had left at that point, and they didn't want anybody to know yet that he had left. So they needed a drummer that can come in, you know, pull another kind of Peter performance. Yet at this point, I think they were a little more secure with having him on the record and let him branch out a little bit more in his own style, which is clearly obvious when you listen to some of the songs. Because now looking back in retrospect, listening to this record, the fact that any of us even would have thought for an instant that that was Peter Criss playing on this record is kind of almost mind altering in my opinion, because you listen to a song like Torpedo Girl, he has never played drums like that on any record. Those kinds of tom rolls and stuff like that he did in there are not Peter Criss style at all. So I think that he showed on this record that he can sit in Peter's chair and kind of do his style and pull the wool over people's eyes for the most part. But when they needed him to kind of branch out and do something a little bit more, risque or something a little bit more challenging and daring, he was the guy who could go and do it. And, they rewarded him handsomely. I think they said they gave him $20,000 to come in and do it and not leak a word about it. And I think he did a great job. Unmasked has been one of those records that has grown in stature for me over the years as well. So, and I think Anton's drumming has a lot to do with it. It's the backbone of the record.
Excellent. So Lonnie and I agree again, twice in one show. What's the world coming to? Lonnie, talk about Unmasked and who our MVP was.
Our MVP is Paul Stanley. I think the album itself just screams Paul to me. And I talked about how Ace Frehley was really coming into his own on Dynasty. Well, Paul had come into his own on Dynasty too as a songwriter, not just on Dynasty, but with his solo album and Love Gun before that. We talked the last show about, I chose Paul Stanley as my MVP on Love Gun just because he wrote Love Gun and I Stole Your Love. Then Paul comes in, does his solo album, he does Dynasty, he does this, and say what you want, and a lot of people don't like the production on Unmasked, but Paul contributes some really great songs to this album, and it's really a Paul Stanley type album between Is That You and Shandy and Tomorrow. Paul Stanley really, really shines on this pop Kiss album. I just think that there's, to me, I know, and I thought Vinny Ponce again, and I thought Ace again, because Ace contributed some good songs as well. But to me, it just had to be Paul Stanley because of, again, his songs were just on a different level compared to the other ones that appeared on the album. So I had to go with him.
Agreed. And his songs were better. Ace's had declined from a high point on Dynasty. Paul's vocals, again, were fantastic on Unmasked, and Vinny really captured him perfectly. But I give Paul the nod simply because of songs like Easy As It Seems, What Makes the World Go Round, and of course The Mighty Tomorrow. So that's strictly why he does. Gene barely gets a nod in there. Yeah, his material's okay. Ace is okay. Anton's drumming is okay. It's a bit too polished. Paul, clear winner for me. Let's move on to everyone's favorite concept album, Music from the Elder. And on this one, well, Mark and Ken are on the same page, but no one else is. I went with Paul as the MVP for this album for one reason, to make Ken go, what?
That's what I did.
You did.
And
Julian should go first on this stuff.
yeah, and that's why I'm going first on this, because it's the definition of a hero is someone who's a coward having to rise above. They have to rise the highest to be a hero. And Paul had to rise the highest. He had to rise to it. He had to rise his heart. He really stretched himself the most on this album in terms of his vocals. Having the guts, not to stand alone, but to do falsetto is a really, really challenging thing to actually do it and then release it. And then, of course, there is the vocals on The Oath. Paul Stanley. Paul, and some of his lead work. as well throughout. His guitar playing on this album is just exquisite. So I don't care what anyone else says. That's what I think. Now, Mark, jump in, and you can start Ken off by telling us why I'm wrong.
Well, I picked Gene, and I think I'm still in shock from that explanation over Paul there. Basically, I think the reason why I picked Gene is because while this record is a disaster in every sense of the word, it was his idea, Gene's, right? And his songs and his performances on this record, to me, are the only ones that seem truly believable. I mean, everybody else in this record seems uncomfortable with the idea. You just openly said that Paul wasn't really cool with doing this record. I mean, Eric Carr has been well noted to saying that he was expecting to come in and do a big rock record and had to come in and do this. So clearly he wasn't in his element doing this, right? And we all know what Ace thought of it. I mean, he threw it out the window of his car, right? So realistically, the only person that deserves any kind of MVP, the only person who took it for what it was and really put his effort into it, you know, and because it wasn't Bob. I mean, he was so high on cocaine, he probably didn't even know if he was working on a Disney album, let alone a Kiss album. So you can't give it to him, you know. So it's Gene. Gene was the one who steered this ship. It was his idea. It was his everything. I mean, I think that, you know, songs like Mr. Blackwell and, you know, even other songs on the record too, like Only You and stuff like that, they sound to me like the only songs that I believe he put his heart into. And the other guys, I just think were just kind of, you know, okay, we got to do this. Okay, I'll kind of play along. I think Gene was the only one who was in it for the long haul, and his performances were the best. Everybody else kind of seemed really uncomfortable on this record.
He played it completely safe. Ken.
All right, so I agree with Mark, of course. Yeah, you know, the thing about, you said, you know, Paul and his falsetto, he was already practicing that. I mean, he had that back in Dynasty, in I Was Made for Loving You, and also on Unmasked. He did that in the couple of the songs on there. So he had already been on the way. I assume that Bob Ezrin said, hey, this is a kid going to be sounding like, why don't you sing it in your high falsetto voice to make it sound like it's a young boy, you know? So, and that's probably how that came about. But, you know, and he pulled it off. That was good. But for the most part, you know, it's Gene. It's Gene's really, from his short story, I guess, his pretty much concept. And then, you know, his songs like Only You, and he's singing on Under the Rose, and Blackwell was great. And right? Mm-hmm. Which is, you know, another anthem. And so it's all, and, you know, even though he took also Paul Stanley's song, right, A World Without Heroes, he sang that one. I mean, Paul wrote it, which is a great song. But I gotta give it to Gene. It's this album is pretty much all Gene, mostly Gene, as far as the concept and just the feel of it is definitely him.
Right, but they completely rehashed Destroyer with Gene's material and didn't break any new ground where Paul did. And I'm wearing my purple headband background today, just as a deliberate dig at you all for your nasty comments to me. Lonnie, tell us why we're all wrong.
You're all wrong. Because the MVP in this album is clearly Bob Ezrin. I don't give a crap what Mark says. It is clearly 100% Bob Ezrin. And you're all going to agree with me here in the next couple of minutes. Because the album starts off with fanfare. It's MVP of the album. Who's the most influential person for this album? It's Bob Ezrin. Has Kiss ever started an album with anything like fanfare previously? No.
Thank God.
Have they done something goofy to start an album before? Yeah, Destroyer. Who was the producer of that album? Bob Ezrin. Bob Ezrin is the most influential person on this album. And then you go into Just a Boy with Paul singing the way he is. Who told Paul to sing that way? Bob. Bob is the most important person for the way this album turned out. The most important person in the room is Bob Ezrin. And you can go all the way down the line. And you can even go all the way down with World Without Heroes, Gene crying in the video. Come on. It's all Bob. And then it ends with and it ends with this outro of, do you still think he's chosen for the fellowship? Well, I certainly do, my lord. Come on. It's totally Bob Ezra and Alice Cooper.
My lord?
Pink Floyd, whatever the hell he says.
It's not Downton Abbey.
The song's over. I don't listen to the little outro. But Bob Ezra is the most important person in the room for the way the Elder came out, for the way the Elder is, who is most responsible for the Elder as we know it. It's Bob Ezra 100%. Not Paul, not Gene. I can see Julian's point with Paul, though.
It's
actually,
the record company.
Then I came with Gene. Gene, I like Gene. Don't get me wrong, but Gene hadn't really put out a really strong. I mean, I like Charisma off of Dynasty, but Gene's material had really waned at this point for the last few albums, and Gene wasn't really knocking it out of the park with material at this point in time. Sure, Gene came up with a little short story, but I don't think Gene's heart was really into much of anything with Kiss at this point. He was more interested in Cher or Diana Ross or taking off the makeup to explore other roles. I don't really think Gene's heart was really into what's happening at this point. So it's clearly Bob Ezra is the most important person in the room, but came out on the vinyl.
But if you say that Gene was mainly into, Cher and these people. I mean, at this point, Bob Ezra is mainly into cocaine. So, I mean,
Bob
really...
Ezra's still the most responsible for what the final product.
He didn't even know what was going on. He wasn't there half the time. It said in many literary books I read that he was not there half the time. He didn't even know where he was. He's probably in a hotel room, like half out of his mind, running around saying, "Where am I? Where am I?" He probably didn't know what was going on half the time.
I think Julian's done more research on the Elder than any of us could ever dream of. Julian is probably right, though, at the end of the day.
The way the album ended up is due to Bob not having a backbone to say, no, we're not going to change it and leave it as it was originally intended. And the record company won out, and we got what we got. So I wish, they would have, stood the ground, and maybe they wouldn't have ever released it back.
But the interesting thing is, though, wasn't the record label the ones that said that they didn't think there was enough guitars in it, that it needed to be remixed to make the guitars more dominant? Or I am correct in that, Julian, am I not?
You are, and what's the difference? There is no difference, in essence, between the two versions in terms of the guitars. There are no more guitars in the second version. It's just the songs mixed around. So whether there are other tapes out there of mixes that have yet to surface, I'd just like to add, if Ace threw his tape out the window when he first heard The Elder, that would be the first advanced mix, which I've obviously shown the tape before. But someone was selling Ace's copy. That's amazing. If he threw it out the window and it was then available for sale in the last year, yeah, really, you threw it out the window, Curly, huh? I don't think so.
I guess he didn't.
He said he threw it against the wall. He said he threw a CD against the wall, which was before
in 1981.
Well, there you go. I mean, we're talking about another person who wasn't all there either at the time, right?
Yeah. So, okay. Well, obviously that was really fascinating. So let's quickly put another quarter in the machine, and we're going to set Lonnie off again. Kiss Killers. And actually, no one's going to get set off by this. Everyone is universal in their opinions about this album. And obviously, there are 4 songs which we're primarily judging the album by, rather than the abominations for what they kind of mixed as a sampler for the catalog for the rest of it. But off the 4 albums, everyone concurred. Paul Stanley. Lonnie, start with you.
Yeah, it's clearly Paul Stanley. They're all 4 Paul Stanley songs. Some people, really dig these 4 songs. I think they're fine. I like Nowhere to Run. I like Partners in Crime. I think they're good songs. They're not as good as the material that ended up on Creatures, but they're good songs. And if we're just voting on an MVP for this compilation album with 4 additional songs, well, who sang on all 4 songs? Who's responsible for these 4 songs? It's clearly Paul Stanley. Again, Gene's material was not up to par at this point. That's why it wasn't an MVP on The Elder. That's why it's an MVP here either. So it's clearly Paul Stanley. It's just a consensus among the 4 of us. It's an easy pick.
Mark.
Yeah, there's no question it's Paul Stanley. I mean, 4 songs, he wrote them. I mean, the way I kind of look at it, there were 3 good songs and 1 really, really, really good song. I think Nowhere to Run is easily one of Paul's best songs that he did. I've always loved that song since the very first time I bought it. Incidentally, Kiss Killers was the very first album I actually bought with my own money at the record store when I was a teenager, and I remember it having that import sticker on there from Polygram and everything. I was like, wow, what the hell is this? Because what caught me was the cover of that. I was like, what is this? It looks so odd, and it looks so unlike a Kiss kind of cover, like with the colors and all that. Right? So I brought it home, and right away I loved it. There was lots of songs that I was familiar with because of my sister that was on there, but those new songs were really well done. I mean, considering the pressure that they were under to make these songs and to get something out there to appease their record label overlords, I think that he did a pretty good job in a short amount of time that he had to do it.
Yeah, just pop perfection that really married where Paul was in 79, 80 with a harder rocking edge. And just think, Nowhere to Run. When you think about having Escape from the Island and some of the kind of plot for The Elder of not having that used on that album, great that he really had songs. I think they're great quality songs. Are they perfect? No. But I'm a Legend Tonight, again, when I first found that in a mall in the mid 80s with that Polygram import sticker, it was PSI on the back label in the US, and I know the Canadian one had like a pretty big sticker with the same thing, so the cover. That's why that reissue that's coming out has done so well, I think, because not only is it a very visually appealing album, it's also got some strong music on it and a decent sampler of just the rest of the catalog. Ken?
Yeah, I agree for the same reasons as you guys. The 4 songs, I chose Paul, of course, too. And I think two to 3 of the songs are pretty darn good. The 4th song is it's okay, it's not up to standards as far as I'm concerned, but definitely 2 of the songs are really, really good. Could they have been produced a little bit better? Yeah, it doesn't sound like what was to come in Creatures, but it was something extra and something new from Kiss is what I was always looking for. There's new songs. So, I got excited about that. So it was good. And yeah, no doubt Paul, came up with 4, decent songs to put on there.
Very cool. Well, there we go. Unanimous on Kiss Killers. All right, moving on. Creatures of the Night. And we've got 2 people who agree. So, Mark, start us off with your pick.
Okay, well, before I start, I got to preface my pick by saying that I was actually highly, highly impressed with Julian's selection and felt almost kind of bad that I didn't pick them myself. But I'm going to stick with my reason for probably the similar reasons for what Julian's going to talk about. I picked Michael James Jackson. I think that he did an absolutely bang-up job producing this record. This record, to me, the very first time I heard it, literally was a jaw on the floor moment when I was like, what the hell is this? I mean, the drums on this record, the whole production of the whole sound of it, the soundscape of it, is something, in my opinion, that has never been matched or equaled again by Kiss on anything else they've done in their catalog. It's never been duplicated. The drums sound incredible. Gene's bass guitar, even though he didn't play very much bass on it, but the bass guitar sound on here is really, really good. I mean, it's incredible what a good pair of active pickups on a bass guitar and a bit of growl added to it can do for a bass sound. I mean, just listen to Rock and Roll Hell, that bass during the verse, an incredible bass tone. I've always loved that tone. He had something similar like that on Naked City on Unmasked, but this was just another step up on it. The vocals also are another thing that sound really good. Listen to this album on headphones. The vocals are really well done. I mean, even when they kind of put their balls right into it, it doesn't sound shrieky or shrilly. I mean, it's just a fantastic, fantastic job. And I mean, it's amazing what a good drum room and a great pair of Telefunken microphones can do for a drum kit. I mean, that drum kit again. When I heard that comment from Gene Simmons when somebody went up to him, I think it was on a Kiss cruise, and asked him why they never went and continued with that sound on Lick It Up, and he said to them, well, because it didn't sell, I thought was very narrow-minded, because, I mean, I think with the songs that they wrote with Lick It Up, if they had that same production, it could have been something. I mean, who knows? Maybe it wouldn't have sold as good, but I still think it would have been an incredible record with that sound. Again, my hat's off to Michael James Jackson. Everything about this record I love. It is probably my most listened to record when I want to turn something up to 10 in my house. This is the album, and he's the one that's MVP in my opinion.
Very nice. Ken, you concur with Mark.
I do concur. Michael James Jackson obviously did a great job. He pulled, a great team together to produce this album, and including multiple guitarists. Having picked the right. Even who would have thought that Creatures of the Night. What is it? Can't remember the guy's name now. Who did the guitar solo? It's from Mr. Right?
No.
Michael Ferris or something like that?
Oh, yeah, Steve Ferris.
Steve Ferris, yeah. So, I mean, even to get him to come in and pull a solo, it's a great solo. I mean, and then the guys to, pick up the drumming, mic the drumming and do the, where was it recorded, in a elevator or something? Something like that. But, it was just perfect. And the sound of it is just in your face, really, on that album. And that's what I remember about it. It's like holy cow, this thing is, blowing me away. So just for the standpoint of the sound, having the right things, or the right people doing their job, he just pulled it all together and did a great job on it. I couldn't really pick a band. I almost did, but I thought Michael James Jackson deserved it.
Yeah. Okay. Lonnie and I are nearly on the same page. Lonnie.
I almost went with Michael James Jackson, and it would have been easy to go with Michael James Jackson, but I had to go with Eric Carr, because what's the common thing that both Ken and Mark have been talking about? Well, how great do the drums sound on this album? Well, who's the drummer? It's Eric Carr shining his brightest that he shines throughout his whole Kiss career on this album. His drumming is just impeccable, and it's in your face, and it's Zeppelin-esque. It's so in your face is what it reminds me of the most when I listen to Creatures. And again, I agree with Mark. I don't understand why they didn't continue on to Look It Up and beyond in the same vein and utilize this new drummer that they found and embrace this new sound that he could bring to the band. That to me is almost the biggest shame of the 80s, that they didn't embrace that and keep that tone going and say, this is our new sound going into the new decade. But Eric is just hits it out of the park on this album. From the intro to Creatures of the Night, I mean, it's like, whoa, what's this? You know what I mean? The intro to Creatures of the Night is just like, oh. And then you get to I Love It Loud, it's like, oh, it's incredible all the way through to the end of War Machine. Eric's drumming is the best it is on any Kiss record. And I'll sit here and sing the praises of Peter Criss when we talk 70s, and everybody on this show knows how much I love Revenge, and I love the Eric Singer, Bruce Kulick lineup, and I like Eric and the band to this day. But when I think of Creatures of the Night, I think of the drumming, and I think we all do. So I have to go with Eric Carr. As much as I thought, well, Michael James Jackson, he did produce it, and I love the sound of Creatures, but it has to be Eric Carr.
All right, so I'm nearly with Eric Carr. I actually went with, something that Ken has touched on and Mark as well mentioned. I gave the MVP to Nico Bolas and Rich Bosworth. who were responsible for recording the drums. Now, I know when you put a racing car driver in a car, you can put Lewis Hamilton in, pretty much any car, and he's going to drive it well. He's going to get a feel for it very quickly. And that's the same with Eric Carr on drums. But those weren't his drums. Those were a Heinz 57 kit put together by Shep Lonsdale, associated with Toto, and then mic'd by Nico and Rich and recorded by them with Michael James Jackson. So I think that is really where the factor is, because we all think Creatures, we all think the sound of the drums. And I think because we think the sound of those drums, I have to give them the technical award over Eric, because I'm pretty sure Eric Carr played some tin cans in his career and made them sound great, because the drums sounded great on the next album, but it wasn't the same kit, and it wasn't the same sound because Rich and Nico, I hate you. I'll be in Nashville in August. So thank you for interrupting my train of thought as well. Because Eric's performance was just as strong on Lick It Up, but the drums don't sound the same. That's why I give it to the technical guys. Because I think once in a while, the technical guys got to get some respect for what they do as well in the industry, because we always talk about the great playing. And come on, how many albums are there out there for you that you really think the drums sound great on that album? Creatures is one for me. Nevermind, Nirvana is another one where I love the drums, and Zeppelin 4. Those are essentially the albums that I love the drumming on. And, they've all got great players. All right, let's move on to that next one. Lick It Up. Or Lick It Sideways. Lick It Down. Ken, let you get us started with your pick, because we're not quite unanimous on this one either.
Almost unanimous. What I did is I picked, Gene and Vinny as the most valuable players on this one. And I could take... first of all, let's just say Vinny for his songwriting and guitar playing on this, helping, writing with Paul, writing with Gene, on pretty much everything almost on the album. He was just fantastic. His sound on a lot of the songs, sounded like Vinny if you compare it to his solo work that came afterwards. You could see the influence there on certain songs. So that's that. So Vinny. And then Gene, and I can take one of Lonnie's, reasons he put Paul on. I think it was Dynasty or Unmasked. Maybe it was Unmasked or something about it was Ace.
Love Gun. Or Love Gun.
Or whatever, being on having most of the songs, wrote most of the songs on it. Okay, Gene did. He was on. He wrote in 6 songs, involved in 6 songs, and all his songs are, to me, I like all of his songs, including the ones he wrote by himself, which were "Dance All Over Your Face," I believe, and. What was the other one he wrote by himself? He wrote a couple by himself. Fist Like a Glove. I believe that was by himself. He wrote with Vinny on And on the Eighth Day, right? God Created Rock and Roll, that one. That one, to me, is a great song. It's a great song. It's in the vein of Back in Black, Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. It's in that same vein. It's kind of a slow, what do you want to call it? A slow anthem, I would call it. And then you got Not for the Innocent, of course, and Give Me More. And also about Gene on this album, his vocals were fantastic. This is his new era of vocals. It's kind of started with Creatures. He got rid of the Cookie Monster stuff that he was doing prior. And now, starting with Creatures, it was a different voice. And it's pretty much the voice we hear up to today now. And I think he perfected it on Look It Up, I mean, Not for the Innocent, it's just so darn dirty, mean a sound to his voice, and even on the other songs. So I think he does some good screaming on this one too, actually. So that's why I give it to Gene and Vinny. I think they both deserve it. Look It Up.
Mark, help us.
Wow. Okay. So I put down Vinnie Vincent, and initially in my notes, this is the only album that I had just one sentence in here. I put Vinnie Vincent. He pretty much wrote the damn record. So basically, let's put it this way. I give him props for the fact that he joined the band. He was a guy that clearly they weren't too keen on, joining the band. I mean, it's very obviously documented that everywhere. And, as much as we, poke fun at Vinny, I mean, I'm sure he probably got the vibe that he wasn't probably completely welcome into the band, but he did a good job on the Creatures tour, and then he comes back after one tour with the band, and it wasn't even a long tour. He picked up on the vibe of the band, picked up on kind of what was out there and what was kind of, popular in music. And he wrote a record full of songs that to this day, many, many, many people think is probably one of the better Kiss records. Look It Up. And, that's all down to him. I mean, we all know Gene and how he can be with songwriting. He adds 3 words, and adds 1 chord to it. He has a songwriting credit, So really, I mean, I really wonder how much of some of these songs he did write. I mean, sure, obviously Fits Like a Glove is total Gene. I have no question that's his, But I mean, some of these other songs, I really wonder how much he did help Vinny. I'm guessing a lot of these songs are majority him. I mean, we know songs like Lick It Up is pretty much all him, yet Paul Stanley has credit on there, But for what? The whole song is pretty much the same as he wrote it when he demoed it, So again, I'm very, very much questioning this whole co-writing business with him. But on the other hand, you got to think of it this way. I'm a Kiss fan. I turn the record back and I see songs written Vincent. What are they going to think? What the hell happened? Where's the other guys? They didn't write anything. So I think for appearances, some of these credits were put down just to make sure that people weren't thinking that, they needed this guy to save their ass, which in a way it kind of looks like he did songwriting wise. But, if he would have played his cards right, he could have been on a lot more records with these guys and had a better career with them. But, it got to him, I think. I think he realized how much his songs were, appreciated by the Kiss fans. And he just thought all of a sudden he was the big star of the band. But, say what we want about Vinnie Vincent. The fact of the matter is this record would not have been the record that it is without Vinnie Vincent's input.
Lonnie.
100% agree with Mark. 100%. It's Vinny's album, and I think that you stole my thunder in the fact that
sorry.
I think that a lot of these songs that have a Simmons or a Stanley co-write on them, and we've again, Mark or I or any of us have no way of really knowing this, but I think they have a minimum amount to do with them, because I think that, to echo what Mark said, that a Kiss fan goes and buys this album. Who wrote the song? Vincent, all the way down. Well, why aren't Gene and Paul writing songs anymore? Why is the new guy writing all these songs? What's happening to my band? I think it's a Vinnie Vincent album, and I think it gets overlooked that it's a Vinnie Vincent album of how much he contributed to this album. And it took you talk about we don't know how he was welcomed in the band, and we'll get into it when we talk about Animalize. It took balls to kick him out of the band, considering how much he wrote on this album, to say that we're going to do the next one without you. As much of a pain in the ass as I'm sure he was, it took balls to say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. So to me, it's clearly Vinny on this album. He's all over his hands are all over the place on this album. And I talked about the Elder, how, I said, Bob is the most responsible for the finished product in my hand. Well, Vinny absolutely is the most responsible for the finished product in my hand on this album.
We got to write this date down. February 4th,
You and I agree.
2021. Me and Lonnie agreed 100% on something.
And I think you
The end
really
of the
touch
world.
on the most useful point there, is that even though he was a great songwriter and a guitar player, they were still willing to get rid of him because he was such a pain in the ass.
That really says
That
something.
really says it all. That
Yes.
you basically, as comes the lyric, cut off your nose to spite your face. With Vinnie Vincent, you just do that. This is Vinnie's high point in some ways, and it's not surprising that when it comes to Vinnie's work, Lick It Up and All Systems Go, where Vinnie is being forcibly restrained, one arm in a straitjacket, is where he does his best work for my sensibilities musically. I love this album. I would love to say that the MVP on this is Rick Derringer, just despite certain Vinnie nut swingers, but I can't. I'd be lying. It's Vinnie. Vinnie's songwriting, Vinnie's playing, but I think also the fact that it is restrained and held back by Gene and Paul and Kiss do certainly make it more digestible and agreeable, because we see on the next album Vinnie records just what Vinnie Unhinged is like, and I much prefer this. I prefer melodic Vinnie because I think he brings much more to the table, and that's probably why I like All Systems Go and songs like Invasion more than Boys Are Gonna Rock or On the Eighth Day. So
Sorry.
Okay.
all right, let's move on. We're going to come back together in a kumbaya moment at the end with Animalize for unanimous agreement. We all agree that Paul Stanley is the MVP on Animalize. Their shock horror with no Vinnie left, with Gene making movies, with Eric in the Bahamas, and Mark chained to a guitar in the studio. Who else could it be on that album? Because there is such a difference in quality between Gene's material and Paul's. Paul still has some great stuff, leading off. And who was it? Rick Friel pointed out that the notes in I've Had Enough Into the Fire are the same as Def Leppard's Wasted. I got to get my guitar out next time and see if that is exactly the case or not. I love Paul's stuff on this. I like his vocals on this, but the material certainly is not as strong as on Lick It Up. And, nothing is as strong as the preceding two albums. But it's still a fun listen. It was still, when we did the Animalize episode, my car is still set to playing Animalize. So there we go. It's been, not that I've been out in the car that much with COVID. All right, Ken.
Yeah, I obviously agree with Paul being the MVP. Yeah, he was in control of it all at that time. He was pretty much the producer. I know they wanted to bring Michael James Jackson into, I think at the beginning, to do some of the drums, recording drums, and then he couldn't do anymore, I guess.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, he had to go off and produce Armored Saint.
Oh yeah, Armored Saint, right. That's right. Armored Saint. That was a good album too. So Paul, had to rein in, Mark St. John, who was probably going just wild, as they say, the bumblebee thing, and had to, try to bring him back in, then try to write some memorable solos and not just, go crazy. I'm sure he had to have him actually probably told them certain solos, how to play certain solos. I almost guarantee that. And then, Eric is Eric and doing a great job. And then, Gene was out and about doing his thing. So it wasn't the strongest effort on that album. So, Paul had a lot of good stuff on there, good singing. And, the sound of the album's not bad. It's pretty good, actually. But it doesn't stand out as one of their, greatest records or anything. But it's still a decent one, and Paul did a great job on it.
Nice. Mark.
Yeah, well, I agreed. Obviously, Paul. Actually, I was a little that close to picking Mark, but I'll explain that at the end. The thing is, just like Ken mentioned, Paul produced this thing pretty much. I mean, it does say Paul and Gene Simmons, but we know Gene didn't do dick all on this record as far as production or anything like that. Yeah. So that's just for appearances, I think. I've always kind of looked at this record as a warm-up for Paul in his production role, that he kind of, got his feet wet here on this record, and then he kind of hit a home run with Asylum next, but he kind of got, his feet wet here. Having Michael James Jackson do the drums for this, I think immensely helped, because the drums are pretty powerful on this record. I find that the songs are good, but they're far from anything stellar. I think they lucked out that Paul wrote Heaven's on Fire. It's a catchy song. It is the big hit. It's what sold this record pretty much. But beyond that, I think the reason why I was kind of thinking about Mark St. John is, much like Vinnie Vincent and Bruce Kulick later, I find that Kiss albums in this time period are defined by their lead guitar players. Because if you just leave it to Paul and Gene, they kind of seem very basic, very old hat sometimes with their writing and their style. And when you have a good lead guitar player to come in and start, adding some flash and pizzazz to it, that kind of makes them sound a lot more current. Yes, he was a little bit Bumblebee-ish on this, but like it or not, I think Michael James Jackson is the thing that made them sound relevant on there. They wanted a shredder. Shredders were big at the time. They got it with him. Yeah, sure, he doesn't remember how to play the same solo twice, but ask about half the bands that were out in this time that were hair band people. I wonder how many of them could repeat the same solos twice. These bands like XYZ and all these other bands. I mean, come on, you can't tell me that all of them knew how to play everything perfectly all the time. But that's beside the point. I just think that, like Bruce Kulick, look at Asylum. I think that the songs there are good, but I think it's the solos that are fantastic on that. So sometimes I think it's the guitar solos that kind of define these records, but I think that it still has to go to Paul on this one, because I think that his production was good. He knew what they wanted, or what kind of record he wanted this album to be. And, I think he also gets an extra point because he wrote a big hit for them that they desperately needed at the time as well.
Nice. All right, Beer Boy.
Well, it has to be Paul Stanley. Because, one, he produced the album. He wrote the big hit for the album, like Mark mentioned, that they desperately need. They needed a hit single to come off of Lick It Up and to come off center to say, hey, we're not going to, that we're going to keep producing hits. We're not just going to have, one good song or one good single and go back into obscurity where they had been the few previous years. But as much as we want to say that Vinny is responsible for Lick It Up, Paul is responsible for Animalize. I mean, he wrote most of the songs on it. He produced the thing. I mean, he literally took the bull by the horns with Kiss moving forward, starting with Animalize. With Animalize for several years to come. So it is Paul Stanley for me, and I think when we get into MVP Volume 3, I think the consensus is probably going to be Paul Stanley on the next few records, because it becomes Paul Stanley's Kiss at this point for a little while. At least for me, it does. The 80s is Paul Stanley's Kiss. Because I don't think Gene's as hard as into it, and we're going through a string of lead guitar players in and out of the band. So, it's Paul Stanley on this album, and it's going to be Paul Stanley for me moving forward.
I think we're going to prove you wrong.
Okay, well, have at it, hotshot.
Yeah. I'm so going out to get myself a Coors Light after seeing you doing that. So, weak bear. Can only have one because I got to work tomorrow. All right, well, that is our rankings, and that is part 2, and we will come back and do the next probably 8 albums, I think. We will include the greatest hits as well, because, again, there are new songs on the next one. So what do you agree with that we've said? Who was egregiously wrong and clueless and delusional, apart from me? But,
a couple of Gene haters.
Who is your MVP for an album, and what makes them your MVP? Is it the songs? Is it the player? Is it the producer? Or is it the sound? It's such a broad way to discuss music. Well, there we go. Everyone enjoy listening to that new Paul song tomorrow. And for now, from Lonnie, Ken, Mark, and myself, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we've broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.